All right, welcome back, guys. Last where we left off, let's see. We were working on our game manager code, and we got one of our enemies to spawn, but he's not doing anything. Before we move any further, we have to attach a script to our enemy prefab now. And what's really cool is we're going to be able to make one script and attach it to all three of our enemies, okay? So go ahead and select enemy 1 from your prefabs folder. Make sure it's selected. You'll see it over here, and add component. And then go to scripts, new script, and let's name this one enemy. Nice and easy. Create and add, okay? Now, since we added it that way, it puts it in our main asset folder. Just go ahead and drag that into scripts. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our Visual Studio open. The best way to do it is always through assets because that plugin is a little buggy sometimes. And there we go. And there's our enemy code. So the same thing that we did with the game manager. We have a bunch of, variables that we need to keep track of. The enemy also needs to have some variables. Okay, I'm going to delete this for now. I don't think we'll need it. All right, so let's enter in our public class. And let's see. We need to be able to transform from one checkpoint to another, right? So let's go ahead and we're just going to make a public integer named target. And for now, we're going to set it to 0. So the first target it goes to is checkpoint 0 because all of our checkpoints are going to be in an array, right? So we want the first location in our array. And we want this public just because we're going to be able to watch it in our inspector as we run the code to make sure everything's working properly. All right, and then we need to have a transform type, and this is going to be our exit point. Okay, so that will be the empty object named exit at the top of our screen. So if you look in our scene editor, the red letter right here, exit, that is what exit point is going to be. All right, and that is one transform point. So transform is just basically a point, a location on our 2D map. And I will show you how we use this in a second. And let's go ahead and make a transform type array. And this is going to be all of our waypoints, okay? All right, and then let's go ahead and make a public variable of type float called navigation update. Navigation update. And what navigation update will be is basically it gets compared to our delta time, and it's just for different clock speeds of computers and all of that. And so basically navigation update will update our move towards, our vector2 move towards method call. If it's like jumpy or anything, we're going to have to adjust this number, and it will just make it update that many more times. And I'll show you how it works in a second. And then we can make a private variable. And normally when you make public and private variables, they should be clumped together, like all the public ones. And yeah. All right. Why is this yelling at me? Transform could not be found. Well, you found it. Oh, I have to spell it correct. Okay. So that's fixed. All right, so we have navigation update, and then we can make a couple private variables, and one can be called transform, or it's type transform, and this is going to be our enemy. So this is going to be our enemy's location, and we're going to be moving it from one point to another, okay? All right, and then private float navigation time. And we're going to set this to 0 right now, and I will explain this in a second. Okay, so first what we have to do is we have to set enemy to get component. And what this will do, we're going to get component of transform. Okay, and so what get component does, it basically allows us to address, the properties of transform. So it allows you to access other scripts or components, and in this case, we're using a built-in script called transform on our enemy, okay? All right, so once we do that, we can go over to the update, and update is called once per frame, so it happens a lot. You don't want to do a lot of heavy lifting here if you don't have to. So the first things first is, let's see, we have to check to see if our waypoints array is equal to null. All right. So if it is, or if it's not equal to null, I should say, we want to set our navigation time. We want to add our delta time to it, okay? So this is keeping track of, time passed since navigation time was created, okay? And then we're going to do an if statement and compare navigation time to our update time. So now you're maybe understanding what our navigation update time is, or navigation update variable is. And what it is doing is basically if we make navigation update larger than, larger than what, like, let's just pretend a frame happens in like 1/100th of a second. So if we set navigation update to like 1/2 of a second, it's not going to call it as often. And so we can kind of tweak that number and, take advantage of not actually calling things more often than they need to be called, okay? All right, and then once we're in here, we need to see if our target, and our target is our waypoint. So if our target is less than waypoints.length, so basically we're just making sure we're not stepping outside of the range of the array here, okay? Because if we did, it would crash. And if we're not, that means we can move the enemy's position. All right, so let's call our enemy object here and go dot position, not parent position. Okay, and set this equal to vector2 dot move towards. And these are nice built-in tools. And all we have to do is pass in 3 variables. The first one will be enemy position. All right. And the second one is going to be the target, so waypoints. And the target, so that is the index of our array and the position of that. So we're just looking for the waypoints target, so the waypoint position here, and then the navigation time. And this is the time it will take to move towards the new point. Okay, so that is that. Don't forget your semicolon. All right, and then we need an else statement here. So if we are out of, if we're on the last, if we're on the last index of our array, that means the exit point is the next one there. So we're going to go ahead and move the enemy to a position, and everything's going to be the same here. Vector2 dot move towards, okay, and then enemy position still, comma, and then we want to do exit point dot position. All right, so we're not calling out of our array. We actually are setting our exit point right here, and we're going to set that out. I'll show you, like we did before with the game manager. And then we also want to pass in navigation time. All right, and then a semicolon. And then outside of these, the if-else blocks, let's go ahead and do navigation time equals 0. So we're resetting our timer here. All right, so that is reset, and that is good. That's going to move our characters. There's one thing though. We added colliders to our checkpoints and also to our enemies. So we're going to know when our enemy walks into another object on its same layer with a collider, right? So we need to, basically we need to know to hit that collider because we have to increment our index in our checkpoint array, correct? All right, so to do that, there's nice built-in tools. And this one is called onTrigger. Enter 2D. 2D is very important, okay? And also, when you pass in the object, it has to be of type collider. Collider 2D. So this is a mistake that's very easy to make, collider and collider 2D. You want to make sure you select collider 2D, and then you can pass in, you know, anything here. Let's just do other, and all right. Basically, if we hit something, this is going to be triggered. One thing that you need to know is you can accidentally type collision here, not collider, and it won't work. So you need collider 2D. That's what needs to be there. Remember all those tags that we set to all of our objects? Well, here's where it comes in handy. So we're going to do an if statement. And we're going to call the variable we passed in called other. And so other would be like our enemy is walking along and it hits the collider of checkpoint. Other is that checkpoint, okay? So other.tag is going to equal waypoint, right? That was our tag number, I believe. I will verify that right now. I don't remember what we named it. So if we go to prefabs, checkpoint. All right, so our tag is checkpoint with a lowercase, okay? All right, that's right. So checkpoint, not waypoint. Okay, so we're looking for tag checkpoint. If it is tag checkpoint, we want to take our target value and increment it by 1. Okay, so that will, so our target hits checkpoint 1, right? And now target changes to 2, and now our new path is going to be aimed at checkpoint 2, and so on. It's really cool. You'll see it work in a second. And also, so we need an else if here. If other tag equals finish, and this one's capital because we're using a built-in tag, and I remember those being capital. If it equals finish, we need to, let's see. First off, we need to, we need to destroy our game object. All right, so we need to just call destroy and say game object, and that will destroy the current game object, right? We also need to decrement our enemies on screen, okay? So we're going to have to, since this is a singleton, we can call a function, and what we're going to have to do is make a public function. We'll put it underneath our spawn enemy. So public, because we want to be able to access it. Void remove enemy from screen. All right, and all we're going to do here is if enemies on screen is greater than 0, we'll just subtract 1. Enemies on screen minus equals 1. All right, and that'll keep track of our enemies on screen count. So if we only allow 8 and one gets destroyed, now we only have 7, so another one could spawn, right? All right. So once we destroy that object, let's also call that function we just created to subtract an enemy on the screen. So let's see, remove enemy from screen. All right. So that is that. Let's save this. And what do you guys think? Are we ready to run this? I don't think so. Let's see. We need to pull up our enemy. Okay, so see our script, our target is 0. That's good. Our exit point is not set. So we need to take our exit prefab object. So let's lock our enemy inspector window. And let's take our object prefab exit and drag it to the exit point. All right. And our waypoints are 0. So we need to fix that. And then our navigation update, we need it set to something, right? So let's go ahead and set this to 1. All right. All right. So we need to drop our checkpoints in. So let's drag one at a time because it matters the order. It's not going to like this. I need to make this whole array a prefab. 1 second. Okay. And I guess I can delete that one. No, we're not going to. That might delete all of these. Let's try it. All right, we're still good. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and all right, so our enemy waypoints are 0. So let's go ahead and drag the first checkpoint in, and the second one, the third one. Oh, wait. The third one, so number 2. All right. Number 3. 4, 5. Oh, and that one didn't go. So you can see them piling up here. Sometimes it just doesn't like things. All right, there it goes. 6. 7. And 8. All right, guys, I think we're ready to test this. Let's go to our game manager real quick. Oh, we unlocked the inspector window for a second. Let's just do, max enemies on screen 1 and total enemies 1 for now, just for testing purposes. All right, let's go back to enemy 1, and we're going to watch. So target I made public before because I want to see the number. We could change it here. We don't want to, but we want to see it increment when we play the game, okay? So let's go ahead and hit run, and let's see if it works. All right, so look at that. Our guy is moving, glitchy, and he's kind of missing things here. But this is cool. Like, we just animated this. And the jumpiness is cool because remember that navigation update? It's actually only allowing our animation to update once every second, all right? So we need to lower this. Let's try 0.5 and see what happens there. And we're just gonna, so a little better, but it's still really jumpy. So we're going to, and see how he's walking in the grass there? We can make that collider object smaller. All right, so we need to go down. Let's try 0.2. And let's run that. Oh, a little better. I think 0.1 is going to be the magic number. It's still jumpy. Let's see here. Let's make it 0.01. We're going to call this a little more often than we were thinking we would need to. And look at that. Perfectly smooth. Like, that's cool. He's cutting this corner a little bit, but that's all right. We'll fix that in a second. But look at that, guys. You have created your first, like, AI enemy. He's just, you know, doing his thing. Cutting some corners. He's a little lazy. Let's fix that right now. We can go ahead and go to our checkpoint here. And let's just make the size of this 0.1 and 0.1. And if we go ahead and save. So this is kind of going to be annoying, but we just have to copy component. All right. And then go to this one and hit paste values. Go to this one, paste values. Before, when we had one object, it allowed us to, you know, just change the one. And I probably shouldn't, maybe I shouldn't have deleted that one, because we could have just changed that one and it might have changed all these, but I don't think it would have once we made them all prefabs. But that's okay. This isn't so bad. This gives you a little more control too if just one corner needed adjusting. And that's cool. So let's go ahead and play this again and see if he's cutting corners as bad. Okay. I mean, we could also move this collider up. Maybe that object is just too close to the corner. All right. But like I said, it just takes some tweaking sometimes. So like we could just physically drag, you know, checkpoint 2 and move it up like that. Where else was he cutting corners? I think checkpoint 7 was a little tight. Just move them up. No big deal. Everything's good. Let's run it again just to see. And yeah, that's better. Drag it up, make it smaller, tweak your game. You guys have the power. That's cool, right? Okay, so that's done. Like, we're animating our first enemy. That's cool. Let's go into our scripts. All right, let's open up Game Manager. No, I don't want to do Game Manager. Let's open up our prefabs Game Manager. And let's try adding more enemies. What do you think? Let's allow 8 on a screen and total enemies 8. We'll still do 1 per spawn just to see what happens. All right, so it looks like it was only called once. And that's because we're calling this this function in start on Game Manager, not update, which is what we want. But I'm going to show you a little bit of a fix. Actually, why don't we open up that script and let's call this from update, just so I can show you what would happen. And it'll look good, I promise. All right, so update, let's spawn enemy from update instead of start. Save that, and let's run this again. So boom, there's our 8. So you're thinking, well, that's what we wanted. Why wouldn't we want that? It's kind of junky because we only allowed 1 per spawn, and they're like all on top of each other. So I'm going to show you how we'll use an enumerator. We'll use an enumerator to kind of cause a spawning delay, and we can set that delay. And that'll also allow us to call our spawning method from start. So right now, update's being looked at and called every frame. And we're not even doing anything right now because they've already been spawned. And you notice they restarted, and that's because they're being destroyed. And since update's calling it again, it's just running everything again. So like right when the first one gets destroyed, it gets recreated. We're going to fix that. So if you open up your game manager, we are going, let's delete this. We don't need the update. That's silly. We are going to make a enumerator, and it's going to use the system.collections. So we're going to make a new spawn function for now, so we don't have to rewrite. We can copy and paste. But start by writing enumerator. And actually, let's see here. So this is when we use the enumerator, it's called a coroutine. And here's some Unity documentation again. And so you would when you call a coroutine, you use start coroutine, and it runs. And basically, you want to you want to come to Unity documentation and always do things the ways they suggest. Okay. Basically, the coroutine has a built-in, where is it? They have a built-in wait function, and this isn't that great, but let's see. Oh, here we are. See this yield return wait for, and then you just pass in 5 seconds. So using a coroutine gives you a built-in timer. It's great. We're about to use it, and that is what a coroutine is. Let's go ahead and call this one spawn. And all we want to do here is copy and paste the code here. Why is this yelling at us? Oh, right. It's looking for a return value. So, of course, it's yelling at us. So right now at the bottom of our for loop, but inside of our if statement, because we don't want this called if nothing's happening, right? So we want to type that yield return, and then a new, and then we call wait. Wait 4 seconds, and then you pass in whatever time frame you want. And actually, let's create a variable called waiting time or spawn delay. Maybe spawn delay would be a good spawn delay. Okay. And then we also need to call a start coroutine, and we call itself here. So we call the spawn method that we just created, and everything will be awesome. And it'll run through everything. It'll run a delay and then call itself again. So we need a constant, okay? We need a constant of, what did we just call that? Spawn delay. I'm going to copy that because I have a bad memory. Let's go ahead and just type const float, and then I pushed extra buttons, and we'll set this equal to 0.5, and since it's a float, you need that f. So every half of a second, we will spawn a new enemy. So if we have it set to 8, but only spawn one at a time, it'll spawn one, wait a half a second, and spawn another one until we have 8. All right, so I think we are done here. We can delete spawn enemy. We won't need that anymore. We are not done. I have to call this, don't I? Because start is not calling anything. All right, so we basically do start coroutine again, and we will be calling our spawn. Okay, just like we did again below. And there we go. That'll get it going. That'll start that method, and then this method will take care of it and continue calling itself every half second. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and press play and see if it works. Look at that. We got eight enemies going, and they're a half a second apart, so they're not all piled on each other. They look cool. They're following the path a lot better. And like I said, if you want to tweak that, you're more than welcome. You can make those colliders even smaller than what they are, or shift them around, put them on the farther end of the path. And then once these guys eliminate themselves, the coroutine is done. And so we would have a button now that we'll be adding in the future that'll say start next wave, and then you'll get your next wave of enemies. Like, this is really cool stuff. Like, you guys should be really happy. Like, you're doing really cool stuff right now. This is awesome. I'm about to end this video. There is one thing I want to do before I do that. We didn't add this script to our other enemies. So if you select enemy 1 from prefabs and go down to the little gear next to enemy script, say copy component, and then go to enemy 2, and at the top by transform, click that one and say paste component as new, and there it is, it's there. And then go to enemy 3 and do the same exact thing, and that's there as well. So let's just quickly test this to make sure it works. If we go into our game manager, double click on our script. Right now we are calling enemy 0, which is, horny. And let's call Scully. We'll just change this because we know Scully is sitting in index 1. So we'll go ahead and change that, hit save, and let's run this again. And now we should see a new character, a new enemy, and it's running off the same routine we just wrote. So we wrote script, and now all of our enemies can do it, and they all move, and that's really cool. So later on in this game, we can set up like a randomize function or something, and we can have different types of characters. They could have different health levels. So Scully might die easier than Spike, and it will be really cool. So I'm gonna leave it there, and I will see you next video.